Get out and divorce me, you brat. I'm done with you. After returning from my postpartum stay at my parents', I couldn't believe my eyes. Unbelievably, Mike was in bed with his mistress, and when I confronted him, he said something unthinkable. Divorce and get out. Who does he think he is? As my anger grew at Mike's lack of self-awareness, my dad, who had come with me, said something shocking to Mike. Huh? You can't get divorced. Because. The next moment, hearing my dad's words, the mistress and Mike turned pale, about to learn an unbelievable truth. My name is Sarah. I'm about to celebrate my 3rd year of marriage to Mike. Mike and I were co-workers, with him being my senior at the company. I worked as an office clerk at a construction company, often seeing Mike who worked on site. That said, we only exchanged greetings and didn't really interact much. We just knew each other's names. Our relationship changed because of a certain incident. I got a job at one of the companies my dad manages. At first, people thought I got in through connections. Because of that, I became a target for the office bully, facing harassment daily. Unpaid overtime was the norm, and all the nasty, troublesome work was dumped on me while she left work on time. I thought about reporting to my dad, but the bully threatened me, saying I'd pay if I did, leaving me stuck. You're just a newbie, this is normal. When we were young, we did whatever our seniors told us without complaining. Feeling overwhelmed by the excessive workload, I mustered up the courage to say it was too much, but the bully lashed out. She went on about the old days, lecturing me endlessly. Her lectures always attacked my character. Pathetic for complaining, sloppy, no guts, it's all your fault. I could almost predict what she'd say next, as I was yelled at more than anyone. Being yelled at every day took its toll, and I started feeling sick. The bully even appeared in my dreams, hurling abuse at me. Such nightmares became the norm. Troubled by the bully both at work and in my personal life, I started feeling down. That's when the incident happened. One day at work, I suddenly felt intense heart palpitations and shortness of breath. It was almost like hyperventilation, and I could barely breathe. I couldn't control it no matter how I tried to calm down, and I crouched down clutching my chest. But when the bully saw this, she just sighed in exasperation. Cut out the act, will ya? Get to work already. You're in everyone's way crouching there. Tears streamed down my face at her words as I was about to pass out. Why did I have to be treated like this when I was suffering so much? I wasn't lying. I was really in pain. I couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to escape this environment right away. That's when Mike, who happened to come into the office, saw what was happening and rushed to help me. There's no way someone sweating and struggling like this is acting. Stop saying stupid things and go get someone, quick. Mike's shout echoed through the floor, and other employees started gathering. The bully, realizing how bad the situation looked, tried to run away but was quickly caught by Mike and taken to the conference room. Other employees who had been harassed by her reported to Mike, and this information quickly reached my dad. After this incident, the bully was demoted. Finally able to work in peace, I continued with everyone's support. This incident also led to Mike and I getting closer, and we naturally developed a romantic relationship. I thought happy days would continue. But reality wasn't so kind. I didn't realize that the man I thought was nice at first was actually a terrible jerk. And not knowing this, I had become his convenient woman before I knew it. The experienced Mike manipulated me with his smooth talk. Before I knew it, I had become dependent on him, doing whatever he said. Not realizing this, I ended up marrying him and found myself in a hellish marriage. When he came home from work, he'd treat me like a servant, and if I resisted even a little, he'd overpower me physically. But he'd mix in kindness with cruelty, and I couldn't escape his trap. After about 3.5 years of this life, I found out I was pregnant. I had always liked kids, so I was happy to be blessed with a new life. But Mike's face twisted, not looking happy at all. Are you sure it's not a mistake? You're really pregnant? That was the first thing he said when I told him after getting home. To be honest, I think it's too early. We don't have much savings, and we're barely getting by as it is. Isn't it cruel to bring a child into the world to live in poverty? I was so shocked I couldn't close my mouth. Hadn't we been intimate with the understanding that pregnancy was possible? If he was so casual about it, that's incredibly irresponsible. I felt upset at his unbelievable words, but I was still happy and really wanted to have the baby. If you're just worried about money, it's okay because I have savings. It's not a huge amount, but it's enough that we can manage with one more child. The moment he heard this, Mike's tone brightened. For real? You've got that much money? Man, you should have said so from the start. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have been complaining so much. I felt a bit uneasy about what he said next. But it was just a hunch, with no proof. At the time, I couldn't bring myself to question him about it. I was too afraid of making him angry and what he might do. In the end, knowing we had some financial cushion, Mike didn't oppose me having the baby. Still, he didn't seem enthusiastic, barely paying attention when I updated him on the baby's progress. I ended up going to appointments and hearing from the doctor alone, then got busy preparing for the birth. After that, Mike started acting suspiciously more often. He had never cared much about me before, but suddenly he was always asking about my schedule and checking my phone. It felt like he was monitoring my every move, and my distrust of him grew. If I dared to question him about it, he'd fly into a rage. You must be up to something yourself if you're asking that. He'd shut down my concerns like that, and I became afraid to express my thoughts. Still, I couldn't bring myself to leave him. I think at this point, I still felt grateful to him. The debt I felt for him helping me that time was huge. Moreover, Mike could be kind and considerate at times. I guess I didn't have enough reason yet to break free from his carrot-and-stick approach. I was just being jerked around by him. My parents were worried about me in this state. They couldn't stand to watch and suggested I come home for the birth. You're having a baby. Wouldn't you feel more at ease in an environment where you can rely on people around you? You tend to try to handle everything yourself. But you rarely complain, so why don't you stay with us for a while after the birth? I can take care of the housework. You don't have many friends over there, right? My parents were right. With few friends, I had no one to casually ask about childcare. I definitely wanted to avoid exploding from stress and affecting the baby. I agreed to their kind offer and decided to have the baby at my parents' place. On the day I moved back, Mike dropped me off at my parents' and tried to leave right away. I've still got work to do, so I'll be heading out now. He ignored my mom's attempt to offer him coffee and left, almost running away from my dad. Watching him go, my dad frowned suspiciously. That guy hasn't changed a bit. Apparently, my dad was quite the troublemaker in his youth and became a legend at his high school. Mike, being from the same school, knew about this. After graduating, my dad worked his way up and now owns several construction companies. His employees really look up to him. They also have a ton of respect for my mom. Mom was apparently a famous bad girl too, just as popular as Dad. At first, I thought people were just being nice 'cause she's Dad's wife, but it seems Mom's actually scarier than Dad. I found this out when I was little. I was asking the employees about Mom when she caught us, and boy, did we get an earful. It was so terrifying that from then on, everyone feared Mom even more than Dad. After moving back home, I was treated like royalty. All the employees were super considerate, always helping out. If I tried to lift anything even slightly heavy, everyone would yell at me. It felt like I was experiencing human kindness again after a long time. Thanks to all this support, I safely gave birth to my first child, a baby girl. My parents and all the employees were overjoyed. But in the midst of all this, I was the only one looking down. You're still worried about Mike, aren't you? Yeah. Mike didn't even come to the hospital on the day of the birth. Apparently, there was some order mix-up at work, and he'd be home late, missing visiting hours. So he canceled being there for the birth, saying he'd come another day. I lost my temper for the first time in this outrageous situation. Can't you ask someone else to handle the work? This birth is a one-time thing. It's my first time, and I'm really scared. How could you leave me alone? Can't you make even a little time? Come see us. Usually, I'd give up when he said it was work-related. But this was childbirth. Isn't this way more important than any job? Thinking this, I lashed out angrily. But the moment he heard this, Mike said something unbelievable. Can you not stress me out like this? I'm already bummed about having to work. I'll see the baby after it's born, so what's the big deal? If you're gonna be in this much trouble, forget it. I won't even show my face there. He said what he wanted to say and hung up before I could respond. I tried calling back, but his phone was off or something. In the end, I had to go through the birth alone. Our baby's born safe. After the baby was safely born and I'd calmed down a bit, I thought I should at least let him know. I sent him a text hoping we could talk. But all I got back was "good job." After that, there was no contact from him. This isn't good. I need to face him. Just as I was psyching myself up to contact Mike again, something happened. Sarah, we need to talk. My dad suddenly came to get me after work, bringing 2 employees with him. Seeing their serious faces, I knew something was up. I swallowed hard, sat down across from them, and asked what was going on. I need you to stay calm, but Mike might be cheating on you. What? I was speechless at this sudden statement. As I sat there stunned, not quite processing what I'd heard, one of the employees laid out several photos on the table. There was Mike arm in arm with some woman I didn't know, going into a hotel. My junior took these photos. He contacted me yesterday and told me what was going on. And then, as I listened to the story, I started crying right there in front of everyone. With everything that had happened, I couldn't hold back my emotions. I was crying loudly like a child when my mom, hearing the commotion, came and hugged me. Sarah, you don't have to put up with this anymore. That's right. You don't need to suffer any more than this. That guy's gotten way too full of himself. He's crossed a line he shouldn't have. Sarah, what's the most important thing to you? The moment I heard those words, I stopped crying and looked at my daughter sleeping nearby. From now on, you've got to protect that little one. Do you really need that guy to do that? That's right. What kind of father acts like this when he has a child? What happened to raising the kid together? I don't need a guy like that anymore. I don't even want him to touch my baby. Thanks to everyone, I made up my mind. I vowed to get back at Mike and decided to go home with my parents. We finally made arrangements to go back, but I deliberately didn't tell Mike which day we were coming. I thought if I told him, we might not be able to catch him cheating. When we got home with my parents, Mike's car was in the garage, even though he should have been at work. Seeing this expected development, my parents and I exchanged looks and prepared to confront him. I left my daughter with my mom and snuck into the house with my dad. The house was quiet, with no sign of anyone around. Confused, my dad and I entered the bedroom, and an unbelievable sight greeted us. Just as I thought. There they were, Mike and his mistress, peacefully sleeping together, oblivious to everything. Sighing at this all too predictable scene, I took out my phone and snapped some photos for evidence. The camera shutter sound must have woken Mike up, as he looked at us with sleepy eyes. Sarah! Why are you here? Still half asleep and not quite grasping reality, Mike confirmed my presence. But the moment he realized this was real, he jumped up wide awake and hurriedly tried to hide his mistress under the covers. It's no use hiding now. We've got all the evidence, so just give it up. What's all this noise about? Ouch, you're hurting me. Huh? What's going on? Finally waking up from the commotion, a woman pops her head out from under the covers, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Her name's Jessica. She's Mike's mistress, and I'm meeting her for the first time. But she's got a connection to my dad, which is how he knew about her. The moment Jessica saw me and my dad, she froze, her mouth hanging open. I can't believe you're cheating in broad daylight. You even brought your mistress to our home? Don't you have any sense of danger? I know who she really is, but I deliberately call her mistress to keep up appearances. Hearing the word mistress, Mike's shoulders jumped slightly in surprise. How do you know about that? Wait, why didn't you tell me? You didn't say when you were coming back. If I'd told you, we couldn't have caught you red-handed like this. Knowing you, you'd have covered your tracks and deleted everything from your phone. So, how was it? Did you have fun with your mistress these past few months while I was gone? I keep pushing Mike's buttons as he panics. My words must have ticked him off because he glares at me with a terrible look. But instead of being intimidated, I stand my ground and look down on him. You knew I was cheating? Of course I did. How many people do you think know you at our company? It'd be weirder if I didn't find out. The moment he heard this, Mike's panic turned into a smirk, and he said something shocking. Well, if you already know, then whatever. We're done. Get out and divorce me, you brat. I'm done with you. I've got a better woman now, and honestly, I don't want to deal with a kid. Any love I had for you dried up ages ago. His sudden divorce declaration made my blood boil. If he'd apologized, that'd be one thing, but to act all high and mighty? Why should I have to listen to this arrogant crap? Just as I was about to snap back, my dad dropped a bombshell on Mike. Huh? You can't get divorced. 'Cause you still gotta pay back the money you owe me. You think I'm gonna let you off the hook when you haven't paid a dime? The moment he heard this, Mike's face went pale. At the same time, Jessica blinked and turned to look at Mike. What? Debt? What's that about? Jessica clearly hadn't heard anything about this from Mike. She glares at him, trying to figure out if it's true, while Mike's eyes dart around, trying to avoid her sharp gaze. Well, Mike breaks out in a cold sweat, not wanting the secret to come out. I've heard everything from my dad, so I just quietly watched their exchange. I can't believe you were pulling this crap without paying me back. Did you think I was keeping quiet about your debt for Sarah's happiness? Too bad. I've been quiet out of respect for Sarah's feelings, but that's not necessary anymore. I've told her everything. What? Looks like my dad hit the nail on the head. Mike's face shows obvious shock. He'd been taking advantage of my parents' concern for me to act however he wanted. But now that I've decided to get back at him, my parents don't need to hold back anymore. The tables have turned. They're embarrassing him in front of Jessica, who doesn't know anything about the situation. Looks like she doesn't know your situation. Listen up, young lady. I bet he's been treating you real nice, but none of that was his money. It was all borrowed cash, money that doesn't belong to him. Huh? Jessica's surprised by this sudden revelation. But she still can't quite believe it, looking at Mike with concern. Seeing this, my dad makes a phone call to prove his point. Right on cue, my mom comes into the house. I know this is hard to believe, but I've got something even more unbelievable to tell you. Saying this with a sly grin, my dad shows Jessica a document my mom brought in. Mike must have realized what it was right away. Stop! Please, don't! Mike tries to grab the document from my dad, thinking it shouldn't be seen, but there's no way he can overpower my dad's strong build. His resistance is futile as my dad holds out the document in front of Jessica and reveals the shocking truth. This guy's the kind of scumbag who racks up huge gambling debts. Gambling! Jessica looks over the document. It's a promissory note. This is proof that we lent him money. It's an affidavit our company lawyer drew up. The note shows that Mike owes my dad $20,000, with Mike's seal stamped on it. It also states that if he breaks this promise, he'll face severe consequences. This solidifies my dad's claims. To prove he didn't force Mike to write this, my dad shows a video recorded by security cameras. He transfers the video to his phone and shows it to Jessica. Now you see the debt ain't no lie. While Sarah was away having the baby, this guy racked up gambling debts and came crying to me to cover for him. Hold on, what's going on? You've been lying to me this whole time. You were happy enough getting all those presents, weren't you? Even with debt, I had money in my hands. Money's money. Don't get all high and mighty on me now. Mike had been buying Jessica gifts and covering all their date expenses, which ate into his living expenses. Jessica, not knowing any of this, mistakenly thought Mike was rich and fell for his smooth talk, becoming his mistress. It's like the fox and the raccoon trying to outsmart each other. I can't help but sigh at how ridiculous this all is. You haven't even paid back this money, and you're talking about divorce? About cheating? Don't make me laugh. My dad, who rarely raises his voice at anyone, yells so loudly that Mike lets out a pathetic whimper in fear. Mike, who usually acts so arrogant, is like a cat with its tail between its legs in front of my dad. Overwhelmed by the intense pressure, he frantically looks around for a way to escape. That's when he decides to try and pin the blame on someone else. Mike points at me and, believe it or not, starts trying to make me out to be the bad guy. It's your fault for getting pregnant. If you hadn't had a kid, I wouldn't have had to do all this. What? Unable to understand what Mike's saying, I frown. He must be confused because he starts lashing out at me with even more unreasonable excuses. If you had the baby, I'd have less free time. I only married you to have someone do the housework. I never wanted kids. Mike keeps spitting out these cruel words in front of our child without a care. My mom, not wanting the baby to hear this, gently covers its ears, while I glare at Mike, unable to believe what I'm hearing. Having to prioritize the kid, no more free time after work. I wanted no part of that life. That's why I was cutting loose a bit before all that. And then, apparently, when he couldn't cover date expenses with his living expenses anymore, he turned to gambling and lost big. It wasn't just slots, he was blowing money on horse races. Thanks to that, he racked up $20,000 in debt in a single day, panicked, and came crying to my dad to cover for him. But that's not even the most shocking part. So, what did you do to pay back that debt? Threatened by my dad to spill everything, Mike looks around uncomfortably, struggling to speak. As I stare him down, he finally seems to give up and starts mumbling something under his breath. The savings. Speak up. We can't hear you. Mike's mumbling awkwardly, not wanting to say it out loud in front of Jessica and me. But my dad's not gonna let him get away with that. My dad raised his voice to intimidate Mike, who panicked and blurted out, I took Sarah's savings. Hearing this, Jessica's jaw dropped in shock, staring at Mike in disbelief. The reason this guy wasn't there for Sarah's delivery was 'cause he was trying to win back the money he lost with Sarah's savings. On the day Sarah gave birth, this guy was at the racetrack. All that crap about work keeping him away was a big fat lie. Dad continued, looking at Mike, who hung his head in resignation, his tone dripping with contempt. Mom chimed in to add more details. One of our employees happened to have the day off. Seems he was at the racetrack too. He saw some guy yelling at the horses with bloodshot eyes, and when he got a good look at his face, the boy was surprised. It was someone he knew. Said he was so embarrassed he wanted to crawl under a rock. Turns out, we found out about Mike's strange behavior thanks to that employee tipping us off. Thanks to him telling my parents about it, we uncovered Mike's debt and lies, and Dad called Mike into the office. At the time, we had no idea Mike was cheating, so Dad agreed to help under the promise that Mike would definitely pay it back. Wanting to make sure Mike kept his word, Dad made him agree to some pretty harsh penalties if he didn't. I bet you thought you'd be fine as long as the cheating didn't come out. Talk about being naive. Mike didn't know that kid was our employee, so he spilled everything. He must be regretting it now, clicking his tongue and looking away. You remember what you said when I covered your debt? Well, that's... You begged me, saying you'd pay back the money, to please keep quiet to Sarah. You swore you'd never make Sarah cry again. You said if you ever did anything to hurt Sarah, I could do whatever I wanted with you. Ain't that right? Dad hates nothing more than seeing his family hurt. He's a real family man, so he probably wanted to tell me right away. But I'd just given birth, and the baby was still so small. He couldn't tell me something like this when I was so worn out. After thinking it over, Dad talked to Mom. They decided to turn a blind eye just this once, on the condition that Mike would pay back the debt properly and treat me well. I'm sorry, Sarah. We even had a lawyer draw up an agreement, but we were too soft. We should have cornered him more back then. Mom, always looking out for me when I'm exhausted from taking care of the baby. Her kindness and warmth nearly brings me to tears. I shake my head at Mom's apology, telling her I understand exactly how you both feel. You two don't need to apologize. The only ones at fault here are Mike and that mistress over there. You're right. They've really done us dirty, haven't they? In contrast to Dad's obvious anger, Mom's smiling in a way that's almost scary. Seeing Mom, Mike starts shaking, trying to break free from Dad's grip and make a run for the door. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I block Mike's path, and Dad quickly joins me, cutting off his escape. Mom hands me the baby and corners Mike against the wall, leaving him nowhere to run. You haven't paid back the debt, you're cheating, and now you want a divorce? Don't mess with me. Completely cornered, Mike's face turns pale. Mom shoves the agreement in his pathetic face. You said you'd do anything if you broke this agreement. Well, we're gonna take you up on that offer. Anything. Sarah, you can decide what to do with him. Mom turns to me with a big smile and says this. I nod in agreement and step up to Mike. I'm gonna use you like a dirty rag from now on. Don't think you'll be going home after work's done. I'll give you so much work your body will fall apart. Oh, and don't think you've got any human rights. You didn't just betray me, you betrayed my parents too. That's too much. Sure, I did some terrible things, but to violate my human rights like that. What are you talking about? You steal from people, betray them, and you think you deserve human rights? I get right in Mike's face as he tries to make excuses, staring him down. He lets out a small cry of fear. We're not gonna let you off easy with just a divorce. You're gonna work for us for the rest of your life until we're satisfied. You'll be lucky if we only use you like a dirty rag. I step back with a wicked grin, and Mike seems to finally realize what's in store for him. He hangs his head in despair and collapses to the ground. Jessica, watching all this, has gone pale with fear, desperately looking around for a way out. Mom notices her and moves in, making Jessica yelp and stiffen up. You knew whose man you were messing with, didn't you? Huh? Well, Jessica's eyes go wide in surprise as the focus suddenly shifts to her. Mom puts an arm around her shoulder with a smile. Don't think you're getting away. We know exactly who you are and how you met Mike. Jessica gasps in shock at these words. Turns out, she's the daughter of one of Dad's business partner's CEO, and get this, she's married. Dad knew her husband, so he immediately reported this to her father and husband. When her husband found out, he was furious, and her father apologized profusely. They even gave us permission to do whatever we want with her, just like with Mike. We've already got the okay from your husband and your dad. You're gonna live and work at our company too. Oh, and of course, you won't be getting paid. Your husband said to consider that as alimony. Mom's smiling face as she says this is downright devilish. Realizing the hell that awaits her, Jessica tearfully begs me for forgiveness. Seeing this, Mike also rushes over, pleading for mercy. Both of you, calm down. I speak to them gently, encouraging them to look at me. From my tone, they probably thought I was gonna forgive them. A glimmer of hope appeared in their expressions. But of course, that wasn't gonna happen. With a big smile, I delivered the words that would send them both to hell. Please stop apologizing. It's making me sick. You don't think I'd forgive you now, do you? It's not like the past can be erased. It's not like my wounds are gonna heal. But don't think you can run away. Our employees are eagerly waiting for you two to arrive. Now, let's head to the employee dorms, shall we? By the way, we'll be managing everything from your living expenses to, well, everything. Don't worry, we'll give you your pay stubs. I tell them this with a sarcastic smile, and the two, having given up, quietly follow us. Later, we went to explain the situation to Mike's parents. They were furious with him, calling him pathetic. They apologized to me and gave me permission to do whatever I wanted. Moreover, since Mike's father has connections in the police and his mother is a lawyer, they offered to fully cooperate with us. They said if Mike or Jessica tried to come crying to them, they'd just smile and bring them right back to us. Thanks to all this, Mike and Jessica didn't put up any weird resistance and quietly resigned themselves to their fate. So, I ended up suing for damages over this whole mess. Mike messed with someone else's money. Taking that into account, I demanded more than double what he'd blown through. With child support on top of that, Mike looked at the amount and just lost it. He kept saying there was no way he could pay it back, but we weren't gonna let him off that easily. If you work your butt off from dawn to dusk, it ain't an impossible amount, right? You're still in your 30s, so you should be able to pay it off by the time you retire. Course, you won't have time for any fun and games. Dad says these terrifying words with a hearty laugh. Hearing this, Mike starts making a fuss, saying he'd rather go to jail. But his protests were useless, and he was quickly thrown into a brutal work environment. The department Mike got tossed into is the most physically demanding in our company, full of tough guys who used to play rugby or football. It's already busy as hell, and Mike's getting worked to the bone to pay off his debt and damages. He's huffing and puffing every day, barely keeping up. As for Jessica, she got dumped into a new company Dad set up for collecting used oil. She's doing dirty work there every day. At first, Jessica was complaining just like Mike, so Mom got mad and put her in a department with similar work to his. Sure enough, the workload was too much for her, and she came crying to Mom, begging to be moved cause she couldn't handle it. That's how she ended up at her current company. There are a lot of tough people working there, and Jessica, being so naive about the real world, got roughed up by the harsh realities of society. For the first few months, she came home crying every day. But I guess she's finally given up and accepted her situation. Now she's working her tail off, getting skinnier by the day. Those two are living in a real hell on earth, suffering through some seriously tough days. Meanwhile, I'm living the good life, watching them struggle from the sidelines. Thanks to the damages money coming in, I was able to stay home and spend time with my daughter until she started elementary school. But when she entered middle school and I had more free time, I went back to work. My parents were worried and helped me change jobs, so now I'm working for them. When my daughter asked about Mike, I told her everything honestly. I was worried she might want to go to Mike after hearing the story, but that was needless concern. After hearing all that, you think I'd want to go to Dad? I'm glad you got out of that, Mom. As long as I have you, I don't need a dad. I couldn't hide my surprise at how casually she said this. Turns out she couldn't care less about Mike and doesn't even think of him as her father. These days, my dad's taken on the role of her father figure. She's got a great relationship with both my parents. She's even got nicknames for them. She's such a grandpa and grandma's girl. It makes me so happy to see you and that kid smiling. I'm sorry for making you worry. I won't give you any more reason to worry from now on. I don't need a man to make it on my own. After all, I've got plenty of reliable people around me. And so, with the support of those around me, I'm living my life to the fullest.